Okay, everybody, let's do a quick review of the article critique assignment, and we'll take a look at an example of an assignment. So, what essentially you're doing is you do not have to do an article that is based on the same topic as your final health project. But I would recommend that you do it that way. That way, because you are going to have to find an article to use as support for your final health paper anyway. So you might as well do a critique on one of the articles that you have to do for your final paper that you have to use as one of your references. It'll save you a little bit of time. But the idea is that you're going to find some type of epidemiological study or research study, either a cohort, a case control study, a cross sectional study, or a clinical trial, or a systematic review. And you're going to criticize that article or critique that article, I should say. So this is, these are all from medical journals, so they're all pretty solid, strong articles anyway. But what you are gonna try and find if there's any bias or things like that confounding, and we'll talk about that. So what I want you to do is answer each one of these questions in order. There's 15 questions here. Sorry. I want you to, and I'll post an example of exactly how this should look when it's done. You're going to answer all of these questions. What is the research problem being investigated? Why are they studying this? What's the rationale for studying this problem? How comprehensive is the literature review? So, in the introduction to any research study, the authors will do a full literature review discussing all of the previous research that's been done on this topic. So how did they do? Did they do a good job discussing all of the various research studies out there, or was it too weak? What are the implications of the research? And then get into the study. Who was the study sample? Where did they recruit these folks? How did they recruit them? Where were they obtained? Was there any biases? I have a whole study that we'll talk about, or excuse me, a whole presentation that we'll talk about bias and confounding limitations, and we'll talk about how to discuss or how to find those. Um, what is the research design? Is it a cohort study, a case control study? Is it a clinical trial? What were the study methods? Um, how was the data presented? So the data that they collected, how was it presented? Was that method of presentation effective? Were you able to actually interpret the data that they were putting out there? Um, what were the conclusions of the study? What did they find? And then what are the implications of the conclusion? So a conclusion might be that, okay, you have a new drug that helps to lower the cholesterol. So what are the implications for this? Well, it might not have any implications because we already have plenty of drugs that lower cholesterol. Does it work better than the new drugs that are out there? Is it cheaper than the new drugs that are out there? So what are the implications that are going to result from these conclusions? And then the authors will almost always self-identify the limitations of the study. Not always, but usually they will anyway. So I have close this out. I have a quick rubric that we can take a look at. Again, this is what I'm looking for. I want every one of those questions listed and answered in order. Make sure that the complete reference is provided, and make sure that it's properly formatted. Again, answer each question thoroughly. Demonstrate that you understand those key concepts. Make sure that you correctly identify the bias, the limitations, and possible potential confounding. Um, Make sure that you fully understand or explain the implications for research and practice, and discuss the conclusions, of course. Um, Again, make sure everything's written nice and I can understand it. The work is free of spelling and grammatical errors. Please do not use contractions. Write out your words fully. This is graduate school after all, and this is an example of um, a well done article critique. So this actually assignment has more questions on it than you are required to do because I took some of the questions out for our class. So this was just, does UV sunlight affect breast cancer risk? And you can see she did the whole reference, started out with the reference, and then she went in a nice paragraph, 2, 3, 4 sentences for each one of these questions. Okay? And that's what I'm looking for. No one word answers, no one sentence answers, please. Please be thorough. And you're just basically describing or dissecting and describing this research article. Okay. Um, Again, like I said, some of these you do not are not going to be required to, and I think I just changed some of the questions anyway. Okay. All right. So hopefully this was helpful, and let me know if you have additional questions.